My next guest, Catherine Fallis. She is joining us now from San Francisco. How are you today, Catherine?
Doing great, Mike. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm so excited to talk to you. I guess you got a little bit of were you stuck in some traffic or something? Got a little late start there?
Well, it is Saturday, so
it is.
I had to taste a few extra wines.
There you go. Well, listen, I wanted to introduce you, Catherine Fallis, and you are the Grape Goddess. That's your AKA. I kind of like that. That's your alter ego. And your tagline is sort of what I try to do. Your tagline is to help bring wine down to earth. Tell us a little bit about sort of what got you going in wine in the first place, and then tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, Mike, I was not exposed to a lot of the finer things in life growing up. As a kid, being moved around and just kind of living in, inner city and, just a lot of grit and grime. And I wanted more. I knew there was more than the world that I, had grown up in. And also coupled with that was, do you remember cheese that you spray on the cracker?
Yeah.
I think they still string cheese or, Ritz crackers, Kool-Aid. I mean, all that stuff. I mean, while it momentarily tasted good, I knew there had to be more.
Right.
There had to be something better to eat, better to drink, better to look at, better air to breathe. And so I was lucky enough to, kind of have this innate travel bug, and I was working in Manhattan, and, when you live in a place like that, it's easy to get to Europe for a couple $100. So I would work, I would save my money, and then I would fly to Europe. And in Europe, I often would stay in the youth hostels and take trains everywhere. And, so I still wasn't traveling or experiencing anything with a high amount of money. I was, living on $5 a day, and, which is now would be 10 euros a day, which is not much. But even with that small budget, I mean, my world exploded.
Look what you're looking at. Yeah, exactly.
Everything that you see, and I remember biting into a pear in Paris in my first 5 hours of landing, and the pear was so incredibly flavorful and juicy. And then, and then the farmers markets in Italy, and just, everywhere the bread was so unique and different, and the fruit and the wines and the licorice and wine was very affordable, so that anybody, even the working class folks can afford wine and drank wine daily. And so I was just experiencing this kind of opening of my senses. I was going to say, not just of food and drink, but
yeah.
Architecture, clothing, everything.
Exactly. You kind of like you went from a light gray world into a technicolor world all of a sudden with your sensory perception there.
Exactly. That's right, Mike. You described it exactly. I mean, just wow, what an awakening of the senses. And so after that, it's like, you can't go back. So I try to figure out what can I do so I can work somewhere in this world. And I ended up studying hotel management, and I started working for an Italian hotel company. But I was in sales, and, it wasn't the same. And so I wanted to do more. So I saw an ad about a wine class taught by Kevin Draley at Windows on the World. And I thought, that looks like it's, something that I would enjoy. But he wouldn't, I wanted to work for him and help him run the wine classes, and he wouldn't hire me because he's like, oh no, you're from, you have a Cornell degree and blah, 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 and you're going to want too much money. And I said, no, I really want to work for you, and I really want to experience this and learn as much as possible from you. And so he said, well, go take this wine class. He had me take Mary Mulligan's wine class, and he had me go take Harriet Lembeck's wine class. And I took these classes, and I came back, and I had the highest scores in the class. And, I kept calling, and, basically, I think I stalked and harassed him. I mean, the polite word is being persistent.
Well, when you see somebody that you want as a mentor, and you really are driven for that, and you were obviously driven towards that, and Kevin is a great mentor to seek out, obviously. But and I'm sure at some point he realized, okay, I'm not going to get rid of this person. I better sort of guide them in the right direction, right?
Yes, but then when he did hire me, he told me that he kind of does that on purpose to everyone because in his position, of course, everyone wants to work for him. Everybody wants to, sell him wine. And he said it's very effective with the sales reps because 90% of the sales reps would give up after 6 months, but the ones that stuck around and kept trying, he would give them the business finally.
Nice.
So it was a good lesson in persistence, and it's paid off. But I think I was already kind of persistent before that experience. But
well, so
that's what you have to be,
right? Yeah, you have to be persistent, and you have to be passionate about what you're doing. So you studied in Europe in the hotel industry. You ended up being a chef's apprentice at the Cirque, which is a pretty amazing thing. And then what I'm wanting to hear a little bit about, and we don't have, an hour or two. I wish we did. We will do this again for sure. But you worked with Leona Helmsley at the Helmsley Palace in New York City, where you managed the Villard House restaurant. Well, just in a brief moment, and what was that like working with her or for her?
Well, definitely for her. Not with her.
Right. She was on her own pedestal.
And this is it's going back. I mean, people,
of course,
the 20 and 30 somethings won't even know who she is, but
which is fine.
I can just give you one instance that encapsulates the whole experience.
Okay.
So it was about 5:00. She was walking around with her husband at the time, who was the nice one, and he kind of would, be polite and say, "Oh, she didn't mean that," and he was kind of the sweet to her bitter. And there was a light bulb out, and I had already sent a work order. I had already been in for hours and hours. But she came in the dining room to do an inspection, and she said, "Why is that light bulb out? Get it fixed." And I was about to say, "It's in the works. It's going to be fixed." And she shoved me. She pushed me, against the wall, and she stormed out. And that was my personal experience. There's stories, there's many things that go on that I believe there are books about it, but she was everything that people said she was. And
more, and more probably, yeah.
And more.
Well, what an interesting experience. I mean, we all, I'm sure there's people that have worked for famous people that have interesting stories. But anyway, that's part of the whole sequence of events that got you to where you are now. Now we're going to jump into the wine thing. Everybody is interested in knowing about, how you and how people like you. And there's very few master somms in the world. Isn't there less than 300 or right around 300 or so?
Oh, yeah. That's getting close to 300
right.
And still only 10% are women.
Right.
So we need to work on that.
So you're you're in a small little group of people. But I mean, and as I was introing you, we were talking about, I do a lot of wine tastings, and I get a lot of people that are just getting started, or maybe they've been drinking wine for a little while and they're just realizing that there's different. Chardonnay isn't just this like Dr. Pepper. I mean, there's different kinds of Chardonnay, right? Different regions and so forth. So now the interest, which I'm really loving, sort of the shift of perception from the average wine drinker at these wine tastings that I typically do. And they're starting to be more interested in the hows and the whys. Walk us through a little bit of sort of, what world you're in now with, your website, which is really great, Planet Grape, it helps people out to understand wine. You do reviews and stuff there, but just you've got a new book out called 10 Grapes to Know, and I think you've tried to help simplify it for the people that we're talking about, those exact people. Tell us a little bit about the book and what the concept of the 10 grapes is.
Yes, so Planet Grape is our website, and we just launched a wine review platform. And it provides reviews that are non-technical. They're very short. It's about a sentence, so that anybody who's interested in wine, or, a little or a lot or not at all, can kind of get an idea of what the style of that wine is going to be. We also provide a point score because retailers love the point scores, and a lot of folks love the points, and they feel like, oh, that one's 89, that one's 90, I'll buy the one that's 90 points. So if you want the point score, it's there, but if you don't need to you can just read the review. And I wanted to kind of have a way to introduce a lot of these wines, which are widely available, to consumers across the United States. And so I created this book, 10 Grapes to Know. There are 10 grapes that we selected. Each grape has a chapter, and in each chapter, there's a little bit about the grape, a little bit about the history, very briefly. Then I kind of give the grape a personality via giving it a musician, giving it a dating profile. And then I go in and I do, some classic and fun food pairings, and also pairings with frozen food from the frozen food aisle at your grocery store or at Trader Joe's.
Okay.
And then finally, I give you a shopping guide in each chapter. In each chapter, I have wines under 20, about 100 out of the 375 total wines in this book. Then 20 to 50, which is a good category if you want to go up to special occasion. And then just a few wines over 50, a little sprinkling of wines over 50. Mm-hmm. But mostly these are affordable wines, accessible wines, so you can use this as a buying guide. You can read the review and get an idea of the personality of that specific wine, and you can actually find this wine in a store near you or online. So it's a really good hands-on buying guide, but it's also got stories from my travels along the way. In the beginning of the book, there's kind of this introductory section which gives you kind of insider tips on dealing with a sommelier and how to shop well, and how to have all these interactions with folks and how to get the best deals, and really whether you should buy wine at grocery outlet or not. It's got all of that kind of nuts and bolts information. So I think it's a great tool for entry-level consumers. It's not for wine nerds.
Right.
It's not for the trade.
Yeah, no, but
for the geeks.
It sounds like it's going to be a great gift this year for sure, because it's going to be, like you say, it's for the average wine person that's starting to become an enthusiast. What I like about it is that you've broken it down. I do a lot of articles or interviews with and talking about the idea of you can get really good wines from between $10 and $20 if you know what to look for, and you really have to sort of isolate what it is you like in a wine before you even go there, because a lot of times people just have this unrealistic expectation when they come to a wine tasting, and they'll think, well, I paid $25 to get in here, and so they poured me this little tiny sip of wine, and this isn't even really that good, It's like, well, wait a minute, don't you want to hear the story about this stuff? So a lot of times it's really sort of what I find, it's a little bit of the story behind the wine. But anyway, back to the thing, you can really get some nice wines for between $10 and $20. And I think this is an outtake from your book where you're talking about, as an example, Bogle Old Vine Zinfandel goes really good with rigatoni with a tomato herb sauce. It's just really simple and to the point, right?
Yes, and we actually did that. I did a book event at Draeger's, and their team of chefs prepared that rigatoni, and we did the pairing, and it was outstanding. And I sent the information to Judy Bogle, and she was like, "Oh, this sounds great. Can we include this in our newsletter?" And Bogle Merlot is at Trader Joe's for $8.99,
exactly,
or $6.99. Exactly. And the reason there's a lot of wines under $10 or between 10 and 20. There are thousands of wines, but the issue is, are they any good? Mm-hmm. And the reason Bogle stands out is because it's a family that treats their grower families really well, and they have these long standing relationships. And it's easy for these growers, especially in Lodi and places like that, where it's really grower driven as a wine producing region, or has been. They're getting offers from all the big companies, and Bogle is not a giant conglomerate, but they treat their growers really well, and they're getting really good fruit. And when they get really good fruit, they make good wine.
Absolutely, yeah. I know a lot of grape farmers out here that don't make wine, but they grow grapes for the wine industry, and everybody seems to be lifting their game these last 5 years or so. Everybody's sort of realizing, wow, the light is on, it's all green, let's go. And everybody's just, I don't know, just the quality level, I'm just excited about the future. 2015, some of the vintages, let's speak about that for a moment too. So, of these younger vintages, what is your philosophy on, and we're not talking about famous, Bordeaux's or anything like that, but in general, would you agree that the average wine for the average drinker is meant to be made and bottled and sold and enjoyed within 3 to 5 years at the most?
Well,
let's just say California wines. Let's isolate it to that.
Well, it really, really depends. So it really depends on a lot of things. It depends on the grape that you're talking about. It depends on the style of the wine. It does depend at a premium level about the quality of the vintage. But in general, what I will say is that the bottles that are available in your local store, your local wine merchant, or your local larger store, basically are ready to drink. However, they often improve after opening, especially the young, bold reds. Mm-hmm. They improve with aeration just over a couple of days. After taking the cork out, pouring out a glass or two, and then putting the cork back in, they tend to really soften up and mellow and improve, not the opposite. You know, everyone thinks, oh, my wine will go bad. So you're welcome to open a bottle and not do anything to it other than put the cork back in and go back to it the next day and the day after that. We do that with our wines that we review on Planet Grape Wine Review. It's called the Grape Goddess 3-Day Rule. So, and it's most dramatic. You won't believe this, Mike, but it's most dramatic with screw cap finished wines, especially the under $10 category. So, say a simple screw cap Sauvignon Blanc from Chile, you know, $8.99. Right. Well, when you first open it, it's fine, it's clean, it's kind of neutral, maybe a little herbaceous. But when you go back the next day, it's starting to blossom and develop and show all these other layers and flavors. And by the third day, it's like, wow, this is so complex for such a simple wine. But it just needs air, you know.
Right.
And I think the same with a lot of young California wines, whites and reds together. Maybe the only exception to that is a grape that's called Pinot Noir, which is very delicate and perfumed, and it will lose that perfume over a couple of days.
Well, Santos, my engineer, and I are enjoying right now a Meritage from Mendocino, and I opened it last night, and it was a little bit on the edgy side. It's a 2011, but it was a little edgy and a little tannin. And today, as you just described, almost like you were here, it's just softened really nicely, and it's just opened up really quite nice. So, yeah, I agree with that. I call it the shelf rule. I mean, sometimes I'll open up 2 or 3 bottles and have a sip, and they go, oh, no, put that on the counter and put the cork back in it, and come back to it the next day and have a couple like that. So.
Yeah, and I think people are so afraid, oh, my wine's going to go bad. And it's like, well, it's actually the opposite. It's going to get better.
Right. It's going to go good.
In most cases with a young, you know, New World wine, it's going to get better. And, you know, I mean, I have to kind of agree that the best place to age a wine is in my stomach, but.
Well, that's a good one. Well, listen, I hate to say it, but we are running close to the end here, and I want to be able to plug your website. But will you promise to come back and join us for a longer segment next time? Because I want to get into the nuances and how somebody goes through the sommelier training and how you get your sommelier masters and stuff like that. Can you come back and join us sometime?
I would love to, Mike.
That'd be great. Well, let everybody know about your book and where to find you.
So 10 Grapes to Know by Catherine Fallis, Fallis. Just go and search it. We're at Target.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Amazon.com. We are at your local independent bookstore, so please support your local independent bookstore. And it's a great gift. It's really an easy, fun read. You can read one chapter and get a sense for the others. You can use it as a reference guide, a buying guide.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just a great primer. It's written by an expert with a long career in wine, but I'm making it accessible and enjoyable. So I hope you can go out and find it and enjoy, and I'll toast a glass of wine to you.
All right, and that's the key. All right, and check it out on planetgrape.com as well. Catherine Fallis, thanks so much for joining us. We'll catch up with you soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
All right, stick around, everybody. There's another hour coming up. We'll be right back. I'm Mike Rayford. This is The Good Life. 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 This is The Good Life.